The notes Meghan never wanted anyone to see. She was the royal rebel, the Hollywood outsider who married into the world's most guarded family. To some, Meghan Markle was a breath of fresh air. To others, she was a storm coming. But now, behind-the-scenes footage from her Netflix series is raising questions no one expected. Clips never meant to air, a half-empty wine glass in her trailer, bizarre footage of her cradling a fake bump in slow motion, even whispers of breakdowns on set, and tucked away in her private office a stack of handwritten notes, ramblings, redactions, strange quotes circled in black ink, pages left behind, as if forgotten. The footage was supposed to be about healing, but instead, producers began to worry. Was this a visionary woman controlling her narrative or someone unraveling behind the scenes? What Netflix found changed the direction of the entire investigation, and when they followed the trail of those pages, they uncovered something Meghan never meant the world to see. The Netflix deal that was supposed to save her image after Spare, after Harry and Meghan, after the endless headlines and high-stakes interviews, Meghan was ready to flip the script. No more palace drama, no more playing defense. This time, she was betting on herself. The project was called With Love, Meghan, a lifestyle series with a soft documentary feel. Pitched as a modern, female-driven exploration of resilience, reinvention, and self-care, part memoir, part manifesto. And season 2 was set to go deeper. Meghan's team framed it as a love letter to womanhood, intimate, global, personal. Behind closed doors, she called it her legacy series. Netflix bought in hard. After all, Harry and Meghan had smashed records. Nearly 81 million viewing hours in its debut week. The world watched, some to cheer, others to critique. But they watched. Ted Sarandos himself, then co-CEO of Netflix, personally greenlit the second round. Greg Peters, now leading the streamer, called it a bold continuation of a necessary voice. The plan was simple: rebuild Meghan's image not as a royal, but as a creator, a thinker, a woman of substance. And Meghan came prepared. Writers, editors, stylists, cinematographers, most flown in from California. Each episode was supposed to spotlight a theme: motherhood, identity, healing, ambition. But very early on, things got strange. Initial calls with producers turned combative. Deadlines slipped. Meghan requested last-minute reshoots. Entire episodes were scrapped and rewritten. Insiders say her notes were intense, filled with underlined demands, mood board references, even song lyrics. She wanted it raw, but curated, polished, but unfiltered, deep, but digestible. The contradiction wore people down. Producers tried to frame the chaos as part of Meghan's artistic process, but behind the scenes, morale was plummeting. One editor quit mid-season, citing unrealistic expectations. A lighting director was reassigned after reportedly clashing with Meghan over visual tone. Still, no one panicked, not yet. This was Meghan Markle. She'd pulled off comebacks before, and Netflix had too much invested to pull the plug. So they kept filming, kept editing, kept polishing what they had, until someone opened that drawer in her private office. And everything changed. Everyone thought this was her comeback. No one expected what came next. The quiet start of a scandal. It didn't start with a confrontation, or a breakdown, or even a dramatic phone call. It started with a drawer. After Meghan left for a short trip to Montecito, production paused. For a week, her office, a minimalist trailer just off set, was being cleaned and prepped for the next round of filming. Nothing major, just standard rotation. That's when an assistant, tasked with tidying the desk area, found the folder. No lock, no label, just thick cardstock, stuffed with loose pages. At first glance, it looked harmless. Notebook paper, printed, scene treatments, index cards with Sharpie scribbles. But as the team flipped through, it became clear. This wasn't a script. It was something else entirely. There were character notes, but all in the first person. Some crossed out violently, others underlined 3, 4 times. Lines like, "What if I'm not healed? Reclaim the villain. Cameras on. Let it crack." On a sketchpad, a crude storyboard showed Meghan in a dimly lit room watching old YouTube clips of herself dancing while pregnant. Next to it, a note: "Recreate but slow. Let the absurdity breathe." Another loose page had a header in red: EP4, cooking plus conflict equals control. Below, a sequence outline: Meghan in a pastel kitchen, barefoot cooking salmon while lip-syncing to Kendrick Lamar. Cut to confessional: "They said I couldn't do both, One idea suggested a full episode with Mindy Kaling titled, "Divorce Doesn't Mean Dead." The concept followed Meghan and Mindy discussing motherhood, ambition, and the freedom in walking away. Netflix execs later said no such collaboration had ever been approved or even proposed. It was strange, not scandalous yet, but strange enough that a few members of the crew flagged it. The footage on Meghan's personal drive raised even more eyebrows. She had filmed herself alone performing mock interviews. Questions she asked herself out loud, sometimes responding in her British accent, sometimes with tears she tried to blink away. One video showed her placing a wine glass on a marble table. She leaned in close to the camera and whispered, "They made me choose silence. I'm choosing story." The recording ended abruptly. At first, the producers weren't sure what to think. Was this performance art, an unpolished pre-visualization, or something more troubling? A junior exec described it as a mix between a concept reel and a diary entry, and not in a good way. But as more pages surfaced tucked into books, folded in old handbags, stuffed behind vanity mirrors, concern grew. This wasn't just one strange document. It was a pattern, a hidden version of the series no one else had seen. One producer tried to downplay it. "She's an actress. Maybe this is just how she builds character." But another, more blunt, said, "No, this feels like watching someone lose control on camera, in slow motion." And once word got back to Netflix headquarters, the mood shifted completely. What was once a comeback vehicle now felt more like a liability. Creative meltdown. Meghan vs. Netflix. The notes were unsettling. The footage was confusing. But the turning point came during a private review session at Netflix's Los Angeles headquarters. Ted Sarandos watched 20 minutes of rough-cut footage from With Love, Meghan, Season 2. He didn't even finish it. Within the week, the call came down. Netflix was officially pulling creative control from Meghan Markle. She would no longer have final say on edits. No more unsupervised shoots. And no more concept episodes without network pre-approval. To Netflix, this was a damage control decision. To Meghan, it was war. She pushed back immediately, requested emergency meetings, demanded to know who had poisoned the well. Multiple sources say she asked for the footage to be locked until she personally reviewed every second. She wanted to reshoot entire sections, reframe episodes, rebuild the show into what she'd first imagined, a poetic visual essay about pain, healing, and reinvention. But Netflix was done with poetry. They wanted clarity, structure, control. Ted Sarandos, blunt as ever, allegedly told her on a call, "This isn't a journal, Meghan. It's a product. And right now, it doesn't work." She went silent, then she went around him. Insiders say Meghan began contacting junior staff directly, editors, assistant producers, even interns, trying to win back control in whispers. One assistant was reportedly offered a private creative retreat to re-edit a single episode off the record. Another received a handwritten note, signed only with Ann M., thanking them for believing in vision over fear. Netflix execs found out, and the clampdown tightened. Security was upgraded. Login credentials were changed. All production files were moved to encrypted internal servers. One insider called it a soft lockdown. Another called it a mutiny in slow motion. And then came the rumors about Meghan isolating herself from the crew. Long hours alone, in her trailer, rehearsing scenes that had already been scrapped, editing voiceovers into her iPhone at 2 a.m. Wine bottles were reportedly found in her trailer 3 in a single week. An assistant said they'd seen her sitting in the dark, watching early footage over and over again, mouthing along with her own narration. What started as speculation soon felt undeniable. She wasn't running the show anymore, said one producer. She was trying to resurrect it. Back at Netflix, chaos took hold. Entire scenes were scrapped. Rewrites began mid-shoot. Directors came and went, 2 left within 10 days. A Frankenstein-style production began. Footage from old interviews stitched into new episodes. Voiceovers rearranged to match scenes Meghan hadn't originally filmed. Lighting corrected to make moments feel softer, more stable. In one case, Meghan's monologue about childhood trauma was moved to an episode about cultural heritage, just to make the tone feel consistent. It was no longer a documentary. It was a salvage job. Even her closest collaborators began backing away. A longtime stylist ghosted the production. A trusted creative director removed her name from the credits. No one wanted to say it out loud, but they all felt it. The story had slipped out of Meghan's hands. Once she was the master of the message. From the Tig to Oprah to her podcast, Meghan had always been the narrator of her own life, but not anymore. Now, she was watching her own words get rearranged, her story diluted, her vision reinterpreted by strangers. There's a scene from early footage, never aired. Meghan sits in front of a window, writing something in a leather-bound journal. She looks up at the camera, smiles, and says, almost too quietly, "I don't know how this ends, but I know I have to be the one to tell it." That clip never made it to the final cut, because in the end, the woman who once controlled the narrative had lost her own voice. The investigation begins by spring. What started as creative chaos had become something much more serious. Netflix launched a quiet internal audit not because of Meghan's behavior, but because of legal red flags. Buried deep within the footage, IT began with a sharp-eyed associate in the legal department. While reviewing a rough cut of episode 3, a food and feeling-themed segment, she noticed something odd. The narration over a kitchen montage sounded familiar, too familiar. A quick search confirmed it. The lines were lifted almost word for word from a 2010 episode of The Rachel Ray Show. At first, Netflix chalked it up to coincidence. Maybe an overeager writer had referenced the material and forgotten to cite it, but a deeper review uncovered more. One scene had Meghan offering a voiceover about embracing chaos in the kitchen. It matched nearly verbatim a Gordon Ramsay monologue from Kitchen Nightmares. Same structure, same pacing, same metaphors. Another segment, styled as a body-positive empowerment vignette, was traced directly to Pamela Anderson's Netflix doc. Same camera framing, same language, even the same closing quote. This wasn't inspiration. It was duplication. Netflix's legal team flagged it as potential plagiarism, not just from one show but from at least 4. What they found in Meghan's personal notes only deepened the concern. Her handwritten outlines revealed more. Bizarre plans, a musical episode featuring a children's choir singing covers of 90 Seconds breakup songs, a cooking spin-off hosted by Meghan and a fictional character named Chef Calm, a silent episode nothing but breath and movement. Meant to symbolize grief, some of the proposals were marked rejected in red pen. Others had been greenlit without review. Then the emails leaked. Internal memos from producers, directors, and even mid-level Netflix execs all discussing Meghan's creative style. One exec wrote, "We're not making television. We're managing emotion." Another, more bluntly, "This isn't a series. It's a therapy session on camera." And perhaps the most damaging line of all came from a high-level development producer. "She doesn't want structure. She wants catharsis. And that's not what we're here to fund." What had begun as an ambitious docuseries was now viewed internally as a liability. Not just creatively but legally, financially, reputationally. A full investigation began. Production was halted for 48 hours. Outside counsel was brought in. No public statements were made. No articles leaked to the press yet. Netflix wanted to contain it, quietly, cleanly. But inside Meghan's camp, the silence was deafening. According to one insider, she was blindsided. She believed the material was hers, drawn from years of internal journaling, books she'd read, and lived experience. She claimed the overlaps were coincidental, that she'd absorbed ideas over time and repurposed them unknowingly. But Netflix didn't care about intent. They cared about risk, and the risk was now too high. The final decision came in a late-night executive session. It wasn't even debated for long. Meghan would be removed from all remaining production input. Creative authority was transferred to a senior editorial team. Her name would remain on the credits, but as a courtesy, not a contributor. The series she had once called her legacy would move forward. Without her. No more voiceovers, no more rewrites, no more second chances. One final note from her desk was found the next morning. Scrawled on the back of a call sheet, it read, "I told them I was a storm. They laughed. Now they're drowning." Whether it was a quote, a threat, or just a metaphor, no one knew. But it was the last thing she ever wrote on set. The door didn't slam shut. It closed quietly, like a chapter ending before the final sentence could be written. Within days of the executive decision, Meghan's creative office was officially shut down. Desks were cleared, access revoked. The sleek white trailer she once called her vision space was reassigned to another Netflix production. No announcements were made. No statements issued. Just silence. Behind the scenes, Netflix was in full damage control mode. They scrambled to salvage what they could. The footage was already expensive: international shoots, celebrity interviews, multi-camera setups, all of it too costly to throw away. So they brought in a new team, producers, who specialized in high-risk content. Editors known for crafting order from chaos. One of them had worked on crisis documentaries, another on true crime, a genre where missing context is part of the job. Together, they reassembled with love, Meghan from the inside out. Episodes were shortened. Voiceovers were rewritten by a team of scriptwriters. The tone shifted, less vulnerable, more polished. The final product bore Meghan's name, but not her fingerprints. And Meghan, she vanished. No red carpet appearance, no social media soft launch, no op-ed explaining her side of the story. She simply went silent. A source close to her team said she had been deeply hurt by the experience. Another claimed she felt erased from her own narrative. But those words were never spoken publicly. For someone who had once sat across from Oprah and bared her soul, the silence was startling. Industry insiders took notice. It wasn't just a setback, it was a shift. For years, Meghan Markle had been held up as the new model, the modern woman who demanded creative control, shaped her own image, and refused to be silenced. But now, executives across Hollywood were reevaluating that model. One studio head reportedly said, "Everyone wants to direct until the cameras roll." Another, more cautious, put it this way: Meghan was supposed to be the exception. Instead, she became the cautionary tale. Quietly, opportunities began to fall away, meetings postponed, deals under review. Brands that had once lined up for a single post were now hesitant. No scandal broke, no headlines screamed failure, but the industry felt it. The heat around her name cooled. And that, in Hollywood, is the loudest silence of all. There's a saying in media circles: if you can't tell your story, someone else will. And for years, Meghan had beaten everyone to the punch. From the Tig to Suits to the royal stage, she was the narrator, the voice, the brand. But here, at the peak of her post-royal influence, she lost that power. Netflix didn't just take her show, they took the mic. The final episode of With Love, Meghan Season 2 ends with a sweeping drone shot over a California coastline. The sun is setting. The waves crash gently. There is no voiceover, no message, just a soft piano track, fading out. The credits roll, and the woman who once conquered daytime headlines had vanished from the set she built. This was never just about Netflix. It was about power, perception, and what happens when the story you're telling turns on you. Meghan Markle didn't come to the table as a passive player. She built her empire on narrative control, reshaping how the world saw her, one interview, one podcast, one carefully lit moment at a time. And for a while, it worked. She went from actress to duchess to global brand. A woman who seemed to rise every time the headlines tried to drag her down. But narrative is a fragile thing, especially in the age of streaming. What began as a lifestyle series ended as a case study in brand collapse. Not because she wasn't talented, not because she wasn't visionary, but because somewhere along the way, the line between vulnerability and performance blurred. She wanted to tell her truth, but truth, once packaged and polished, stops feeling like truth at all. And when reality broke through the frame, messy, unfiltered, unplanned, the audience, the crew, and even her own team struggled to keep up. So now, we're left wondering, was Meghan exposed or just misunderstood? Was this a meltdown, or the cost of refusing to conform? And more importantly, can anyone stay authentic in a world where vulnerability is monetized, managed, and streamed to millions? Hollywood once promised that the camera never lies, but today, it edits, it curates, it reshoots. And for Meghan, who once turned every setback into a statement, this time, there was no closing monologue, no final sit down, just silence. The last image left behind by her team wasn't dramatic. It wasn't scandalous. It wasn't even meant for public view. It was a whiteboard inside her now empty Netflix trailer, and written in fading black marker, just 3 words: stories heal. But maybe the real question is what happens when the story stops healing and starts hurting instead.